Today is October 21st, 2020. My name is Ashley Sanchez, and I'm interviewing Omar Martinez for the Latino Oral History Project / Voces of a Pandemic project at the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Omar, that this interview will be placed at the Northern Illinois University libraries and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something that you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your consenting. So I'll ask you a series of questions. Please say, yes, I agree, no, I do not agree, after each one. There are several questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. So the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at Northern Illinois University libraries. Northern Illinois University libraries will retain the copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. So the first question, do you give the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Northern Illinois University libraries?
Yes.
Do you grant Northern Illinois University libraries right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow Northern Illinois University libraries to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Do you grant the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes.
All right. We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it to the Benson Library and NIU libraries, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members, so that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson libraries and NIU libraries. So for question 5, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson and NIU libraries?
Yes.
Okay, my last question. On occasion, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the preamble. So now we'll jump into the interview. So the purpose of this project is to understand how Latinos describe their experience during COVID-19. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, like your name, how old you are, how you identify, any job overview?
My name is Omar Martinez. I'm 30 years old. I currently work in a body shop and I am a volunteer firefighter.
Okay. How did you first learn about COVID-19?
COVID-19, I think like everybody else was through the whole, um, through the media, the news media. Obviously, it impacted China first. So China was like a big topic on the news.
Mm-hmm.
And then being in the United States, I kind of never really paid any more attention to it.
Mm-hmm. And how did you hear about it? Like you said on the news, but was it like social media on your cell phone, on the TV, on the radio?
It was on TV. Like I think it was like CNN, Fox News, you
Mm-hmm.
know, local news also.
Mm-hmm. And what was your initial reaction to the information about COVID-19?
Um, my initial reaction to it was like, it's, it's a China flu. You know, it's gonna stay over there.
Mm-hmm.
We're halfway across the world. You know, I don't expect it. to reach the U.S. It wasn't really a big concern for me, just because we were so we're just so aparted from it.
Hmm. And at what point and how did you realize that this was serious? Or do you not think it's serious?
I do think it's serious. When I finally realized like how serious it was is when it affected one of my ex coworkers that I used to work with.
Hmm.
Um, he documented his stay at the hospital. He would put he would do live videos on Facebook, um, probably seeing his stay at the hospital and how it was affecting him, how he felt, his symptoms and everything. And obviously him being close to home, it really made me realize like, oh God, like
Hmm.
it's here, it's real. I think he was one of the first few to get like impacted that hard.
Hmm.
Um, obviously obviously a lot of people still thought it was a joke. I'm like, oh, he's probably faking it. Like, he's in the hospital probably for some other breathing, you know. I think I think for him being in there like 2 to 3 weeks, he finally got released, and I think his family contracted the virus. So
Hmm.
like, obviously, it really opened eyes to all of us. After that's when we started taking it a little more serious.
Hmm. So can you tell me a little bit about your ex-coworker? Like what kind of symptoms he had? What was he documenting? Like what did he show you? Well, what was he posting on social media? If you
He
can
obviously,
remember.
from what I remember, when he was on social media, obviously he was in a hospital gown. He had
Hmm.
oxygen. He was running oxygen through a nasal cannula. And he, I remember him. He would always say that. I think his symptom was like he couldn't breathe.
Hmm.
It was more pulmonary than anything else. He said he couldn't breathe. He couldn't sleep. His nights seemed like it was forever. He would run temperatures all the time. What else did he say? I think he said there was times where he thought that he was afraid to fall asleep because he thought he wasn't gonna wake up the next day.
Hmm.
Obviously he warned everybody that, please take it serious. It's happening. It's here.
Hmm.
Um, I think he was a young. I think he was mid 30s. I would want to say mid 30s
Hmm.
to 40s. So he wasn't an older gentleman. Um, I think that's about it.
Oh, the video cut out. Oh, there you are. Okay. Oh no, okay, sorry, the video cut out again.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Um, uh, do you know like how he contracted it?
That I do not know.
Mm-hmm. But then you said that his family got it after.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
do you know how his family handled the situation or like how it impacted his
Um,
family?
to I don't recall very much. I remember at one point we transported his wife to the hospital with breathing problems, but other than that, I do not
Mm-hmm.
recall anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So can you tell me a little bit of how COVID-19 has impacted you?
Um, COVID-19 has hit me pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though I never contracted the virus, my mom and my dad and my sister were all victims of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
My mom survived. She only got mild symptoms. Um, my dad and my sister were hospitalized, and my dad lost his life in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's very hard because we actually tried to do everything that we were supposed to do, to taking care of ourselves and obviously not going out when we weren't supposed to. We were very limited to our outside exposure. Um, and just the fact that it hit here and obviously with mom being the first one to catch the virus, we figured obviously it put us in a state of like fear and we were worried. obviously, from what you hear on the news that people were dying from it, and some people would just fall asleep and wouldn't wake up, or you had to look out for this or you had to look out for that. Obviously, it was still fairly new.
Mhm.
We There was information, but not very much information, so it's kind of like a blindside hit. Um, I obviously I had to step up and just take care of the family. So it was really stressful, very frustrating at times.
Mhm.
Obviously, you want to do something, but you can't to help out.
Mhm.
It has, I obviously ever since my dad passed, I've taken a role to spread a message to let everybody know, like, it's real. Just because we're young and we're strong and we don't get affected as the same as the elderly or the older people.
Mhm.
Um, you know, because of us young people, we could be affecting different lives.
Mhm.
Obviously, us as young as we are, we tend to just shrug things off. And in this case, that's not the case, because we can carry it without even knowing, and we can affect other people, and other people aren't as strong as we are. So,
Mhm.
like, after the whole, I guess after the survival and everything, I just it's opened my eyes to see the world in a different way. Um, I've I've learned to live life differently, and obviously I still take role in my dad's lessons that he taught me, and everything he taught me, and I just try to put that to play every day that I wake up.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So before we move on a little bit about how your roles have changed, can you tell me more about your mom's experience with COVID?
So when my mom found out, um, obviously she was sad, and she wasn't really worried. She was more just like surprised that she got infected, because she doesn't know where or how. I mean, she has ideas that she thinks she might have contracted the virus at work, but she's not 100% certain.
Mhm.
Um, because that's all she would ever do is just go home and what I mean, go to work and come home while like while the pandemic was happening, and she would never go to the store because I was the one that would go to the store, or my dad. Um, so she quarantined, and so the whole face-to-face communication was cut off completely. We went to text messaging and FaceTiming each other. Obviously, she was very to be honest, she was like on top of things. Like, every certain hour she took like Tylenol. Every certain hour she would like have her teas. Um, when she would get hungry, she would text us right away. Hey, I'm hungry. Cook me up. This is what I want to eat. So she was very precise in her quarantine. Obviously, she would still check up on us on how we were doing and how things were going outside of the room, since she wouldn't even leave her room. And I think she handled it very well, in my opinion. Um, I'm glad that she didn't get any more severe symptoms than what she had. So, and that was our biggest concern with her, that she wasn't going to get worse, but she had mild symptoms, and she seemed to play it out pretty nice.
Mhm. And when you say mild symptoms, can you like tell me a little bit more what kind of symptoms she had?
Just the loss of taste and smell. She lost her appetite.
Mhm.
Um, I think she had one day with like a low grade fever, and and just some like body aches, and that was it for her.
Mhm. And how did your mom know when she got COVID? Was she able to get tested?
Yeah, she ended up getting tested. They granted her a test, I think, just because she had exposure to it.
Mhm.
I mean, according to them, that's what they think happened, that she was exposed somewhere. And so they sent her to get a test, and that's how she found out.
Mhm.
She tested positive.
Mhm. Yeah, so I imagine in your household there was like you mentioned there was like the sense of fear and anxiety. How did it change your household dynamic once your mom got it?
Obviously I guess day one when she found out, um, we still kind of like we were kind of iffy about it just because she didn't seem like she was sick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, we did start like social distancing, like we all spread ourselves out, and the whole hugging and stuff like that, stopped, and it was hard because we're a close family, and we used to give each other hugs and stuff like that, and helping each other out. Obviously, we tried to wear masks as much as we could. I mean, obviously there was times where you forget, you take it off, and you just start doing things because you're at home. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
You, it's not. It's not like a second nature that you have to wear a mask at home.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we just cheered each other on. Like, hey, we got this. We're gonna be all right. Mom's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like the support was always here, even
Mm-hmm.
though the situation that we're going through.
Yeah. Can you give me a timeline of how COVID came into your household, like around the time your mom got sick and then your father and your sister?
Um, my mom, I think my mom got her test results back March 20, like I don't want to say the last day in March, the 29th or the 30th. I'm not sure. And then she was quarantined that starting then. And then my sister, she ended up, we took her to the hospital I want to say April 10th.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 5 or 6 days later, we took my dad, April 15th or 16th.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my dad ended up in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me a little bit more about how COVID impacted your sister?
Um, my so my sister, prior to getting COVID, she had already like had like a minor flu, and well, she recovered from that, and like 3 days later, she ended up coming down. I'm assuming it was COVID because she was I remember day one she so according to the health department, so if somebody already has COVID in your household and somebody else shows symptoms, they're automatically a positive case. So so she started getting fevers and body aches, and that was for like the first 3 or 4 days. So we figured, maybe she just caught a cold. And then um we ended up doing like a telehealth appointment for her, and she ended up getting some like antibiotics because we thought she was sick again with the flu.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously those antibiotics weren't doing anything. She started developing a cough, and her cough was really, really persistent. She stopped eating. She stopped drinking fluids. She was running fevers mostly all day, and she finally said, she said that she couldn't handle the pain anymore, so we ended up taking her to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so when she arrived at the hospital, um, she was she ended up FaceTiming us that night, and then after we got off the FaceTime is when she got intubated. Um, she was on the ventilator for I think it was like 14 days before she actually came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
After she came out, obviously my dad had already passed,
Mm-hmm.
so like the whole situation was like very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Um, so can you tell me a little bit more before we, well, I guess I'd like to ask, like, when your sister was first intubated or hospitalized, what kind of feelings came about in your family? Like, how was your family impacted by that?
um, so when we found like when they told us that, like we kind of figured, maybe overnight or the next few days. The whole us not being able to go and visit her and be there with her, it's obviously very um how do you say it? It just hit us very differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um so mom was worried, Dad was worried. Obviously, the whole family was worried because we figured that she's intubated. She might be maybe 2-3 days because she's young. We figured maybe 1 or 2 days, and they were gonna wake her back up, and and she was gonna be okay. But as the days went on, she was getting worse and worse. Obviously the fear finally came in about like maybe we're gonna lose her.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously she has a little one, and if she leaves her behind, it's gonna be devastating. And obviously the only way you can get updates was through phone calls. So I stayed on top of that like every day, make sure I get updates and informing the family on how she's doing and the progress and everything like that. So it was a lot of sleepless nights and just trying to keep everybody together. And the family obviously knew that she's in there and she might not come home or she might come home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, can you tell me a little bit more about how your dad contracted COVID and his stay at the hospital?
So my dad, um, it's very, I would say, very strange because he type of dad that would hide his feelings. Even if he felt sick, he would like suck it up and be that strong kind of person. So I
Mm-hmm.
really don't know when he contracted it. I just, I finally realized that he was really sick when he finally, um, just one day he just like started coughing and he started saying like, I got body aches and like he would eat, but like it was like he lost his appetite and stuff. So like from the time he got that I realized he was sick to the time we took him to hospital, might have been like 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Had he been sick longer, probably. Um, Obviously, he was the type of person that wouldn't say anything. Even if you asked him, like, "Are you good?" He would say, "Yeah, I'm good," knowing he wasn't. So, I would want to say maybe he got sick or he had symptoms around the same time as my sister when she went to the hospital. Um, I'm not sure, but like when I noticed it was 2 days prior. He ended up in the hospital. Um, so when I finally took him into the hospital, he wasn't. To me, he didn't seem like he was in bad shape. Um, when he when I finally dropped him off, I waited a little bit outside. Maybe he would give me a phone call, but we were texting. We were texting each other after I dropped him off, and he was like letting me know what was going on. And and then I finally told him like, all right, I'm gonna head home. So I came home, and he was still texting me, and then he quit texting me for a little bit. So when I got home, I I called for an update, um, how he was doing and everything. And then after the update, he FaceTimed me, closer to midnight that day, and we talked for a little bit. I got to talk to the nurses. They gave me a little more info on how he was doing and his vitals and everything. And um, he was already on oxygen. And obviously he was talking. He was talking more than what he was talking at home. So it gave me like a relief that he's gonna be okay. He's gonna be all right. And you know we hung up, and I told him, call me in the morning when you wake up, or if you can't sleep, you can give me a call. It's okay. And he said, he told me, yeah, I'll call you when I can or when I wake up or whatever. And obviously the next morning, I got a phone call that they that's
Mm.
intubated.
Can you lift your phone? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry.
You're
And
fine.
I got that phone call the next morning, and they finally told me that they had to intubate my dad because he had gotten worse just within the last few hours, and
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't holding up his oxygen levels, and he was just kind of spiraling out of control. So that caught me by surprise, and then obviously now I had two family members that were intubated, and two family members that I had to keep up with.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, my dad didn't make it through. He spent I want to say 5 days in the hospital, 5 or 4
Mhm.
days. Um, he Unfortunately he didn't stick around long enough to get plasma.
Mhm.
Because when they were in the hospital, convalescent plasma was just starting to happen, and they were just starting to give to patients. So he was on the list to get plasma, but he didn't make it.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your father. So after your father's passing and your sister being in the hospital, you mentioned that you had to take on a new role and you saw life differently. Can you expand on that a little bit? On like the role you
Well,
took on?
obviously I had to fill my dad's shoes. Um, Now I got a family to look after, and just move forward, and just we're all still young, and we still gotta grow, and we still gotta make a future for ourselves. Obviously, mom has become the big priority. Making sure she's fine, um, trying to make her as comfortable as we can. Um, it's I know growing up we used to stress her out all the time, and when dad was around, and obviously he was the one that was put us in check, and now it's like now we know we have to be in check. Like now that he's not here, we all gotta follow his footsteps, and obviously we gotta do everything in his honor, and make sure make sure that wherever he's at, he'll be proud of us.
Mhm.
Um, every day is a new day. The way I see life differently is that you gotta love harder every day. You gotta show more compassion. You come to realize that the world is very cruel, and just I don't know. It's just all I gotta say. Like you gotta do everything today. You can't leave anything for tomorrow, because tomorrow's never promised. And it's just the whole aspect of the living life to the fullest. Is I've taken that into um, really taking that to heart.
Mhm. Yeah. One thing that a question that came to mind was, for Latinos, like showing support is really important, like being physical. What kind of support did you and your family receive during this time? Like, was it mainly all through like social media, socially distance, or yeah?
It was a lot of social media. Yes, there was a lot of social distancing also. There was a lot of what do I want to say? A lot of cards being mailed to us. A lot of people wrote a lot of letters, a lot of phone calls. Um, there was, even though there was a lot of people that couldn't be present, um, they made themselves present in some certain type of way.
Mhm.
It was a very different type of support, but obviously people after I think after my dad passed, it grew fear on people that they finally realized that COVID's real, and in a way it's good, in a way it's bad, because people would look at us, and obviously people were still kind of, they had like that fear if we were like still if we still had the virus present with us. So it really hurt in a way, because like everything had passed already, and we knew we were clear, but you can still see that fear in people's eyes, like don't come near us, type of feeling.
Mhm.
Like, even though as bad as they wanted to give us a hug of support or anything like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And your father, you and your family from Allende, right?
yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit about like what support you guys got from your family members like in Mexico?
So obviously, we had to contact his brothers. We have he had some family here, but mostly all of his family was in Mexico.
Mhm.
We got a lot of phone calls from Mexico, a lot of obviously a lot of social media messages also. Um, Even though the pandemic was happening here, there was still a pandemic happening in Allende. So unfortunately, we couldn't do what we wanted to take him, to where he was born and laying to rest. That was very difficult. Also, obviously, there was a big family talk, and we decided that putting him to rest here was the best bet for now. Um, I it feels bad because there was no closure for his family in Mexico,
Mm.
and it was very. I think since we haven't even gone back to Allende yet, I think once we go back, there will be a lot of support once we return. It's just right now, it's very like it's there, but like it's not. You get me?
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about the ways COVID has impacted your family in Allende?
Um, to be, to be honest, I haven't really talked to my family members ever since my dad passed.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously we've had like small chats, but I have not like gone into depth with them with
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's understandable. But so you mentioned a little bit of how people saw you differently here in West Liberty, but can you tell me a little bit more on how like COVID impacted like the West Liberty as a community? Like how you saw it change differently?
Um, I think once once my dad passed, like West Liberty, like I got a lot of support from West Liberty. West Liberty like finally opened. I think West Liberty finally realized that it's real, like it's here. Um, I seen like I got a lot of phone calls and messages about like what I was doing, spreading awareness, and like I was getting a lot of people supported me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people cheered me on. Obviously, after that happened, like I still had the fear of like going out in public. Like I still was like obviously COVID like grew some fear on me. Like I did not want to go out. Like
Mm-hmm.
I stayed home for a long time. Finally once I finally got out and like started showing myself like in public and stuff, a lot of people would come to me and be like, like we didn't really believe, but once that happened to your family, like we believe, like it really made us believe
Mm-hmm.
that it was happening. And after that, like everybody started getting contracted in West Serbia. Like everybody started getting infected with the virus, and then it was
Mm-hmm.
left and right. And even though like that was happening, I would still get like overwhelmed with messages like on ask like what should I do, or like just asking for like my support. And there was times when I would answer and I wouldn't. I think people understood, and it grew fear on people when people started getting infected, because knowing that it took out my dad and it almost took out my sister,
Mm-hmm.
people were getting scared, and I don't know. There were some people that were still on the side of like it's not real or it's not gonna happen, and you just had to pick a side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned that like a lot of people reached out to you when you started spreading awareness. And I also saw that you did some interviews. Like how did that all start? How did it start with you like spreading awareness, reaching out to newspapers or
Well, to be honest, I never reached out to newspapers. I think I don't know who or where or how, but like the first I got like maybe like 10 or 15 phone calls from like different newspaper sources. They said they had heard they had seen something on Facebook or people were sharing like my dad's like passing, and we had a one of my friends started a GoFundMe page, and I think that got out too, and I think obviously I would do like some like videos while we were quarantined, um, and after I did my first interview, I think it was with the Associated Press. It went like nationwide,
Mm-hmm.
and after it went nationwide, I had like CNN, Fox News, um, people from New York calling me, had people from like Florida. I There was like a bunch of like reporters, and obviously like I did a few at the beginning, and then I turned a lot down just because it was
Mm-hmm.
very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then after like a few months later, I was still getting phone calls. I was still doing interviews. Even till today, I still get calls for interviews and pictures and stuff like that, and people still wanna they still wanna hear my dad's story and just kind of what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I'm guessing by word of mouth or social media is how people um, started reaching out to me.
Mm-hmm. And I know having you on Facebook and seeing like people share your post, you've been very open about spreading awareness. What kind of messages like do you want to share with people?
The message I always share to people is that don't take this as a joke. Like this is real. I mean, just because it hasn't affected your family, it doesn't mean it's not affecting somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, take into consideration the guidelines. Wear your mask, do your social distancing. Obviously, we're about 6 to 7 months into the pandemic here in the United States, and people are starting to get tired of it. Um, People are starting to say it's not real. Obviously, people are starting to not believe the numbers and everything, even though whatever the media feed us, like just let the media do its thing like it's supposed to. Obviously, if you know somebody that's been through it, and if you know somebody that's been infected and has lost someone, be more understanding about the situation, be more understanding about the pandemic, because me myself, after my dad passed away, I started I was informed about a lot of people that I knew that had lost somebody close also, which surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
um Obviously, I can kind of say that I'm the voice for those people, because obviously my dad, even though my dad's passing had a big impact and got like a big story nationwide, um views and everything, my dad's not the only one that's passed away from COVID. I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of friends that have lost a parent or an uncle or some type of relation or a friend that they're really close to, and they need they need the exposure also, and if they can't get it, then I'll make sure, to be the voice for them, um, because even though if you don't believe, like, sooner or later something's gonna make you believe.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that like you take on this responsibility of like being the voice and spreading awareness, but what kind of feedback have you gotten from other people? Like, has it been mainly positive? Have you gotten any negative feedback?
Mm, I think I've gotten a bit of both. Um, I'm more positive than negative.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I still run into a lot of people like, COVID's fake, blah blah, and these masks don't do nothing, or whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter, or the whole that we're young, it's not gonna affect us in any way. But and obviously, it does it bug me? Yeah. Like, am I gonna make a big scene about it? No. Obviously, it frustrates me that people still think like that. And I've met, I've talked to a lot of close people that I know, and they still think like, nah, it's not real, man. This and that. And it's like, dude, I lost my dad. Like, how you gonna tell me it's not real? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it. I lived it. I know what it does. Um, obviously, it's just frustrating. But like all the positive feedbacks, it still pushes me to encourage people, to let
Mm-hmm.
them know, especially the Latinos, because we're the ones that are getting affected by it the most.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason why I say Latinos is because we don't, no matter what's happening in the world or what the situation is, you'll still see us wake up the next day and keep doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously my voice is for everybody, but I speak more on the Latinos.
Yeah. So speaking a little bit about the Latino community in Iowa, can you tell me, like, in your opinion, how has COVID-19 impacted the Latino community?
Um, Obviously we all know it's been affected greatly here in our area, West
Mm-hmm.
Liberty and Columbus Junction and surrounding towns. Just because the fact that mostly all the Latinos around here work in meat packing factories, and you know how those work. Everybody's so close, and everybody works in tight spaces, and it's so easy to have a spread like that. And obviously, they were the hot spots for a while during the pandemic, and I just think that um, as Latinos, we just get up and do what we have to do every day. Like
Mm-hmm.
there really isn't no stopping us, no matter what the situation is. Like even if COVID wasn't as bad as it is, even if we contracted it, we would still go to work
Mm-hmm.
because no matter how sick we are or whatever, we all know we got responsibilities back at home that we have to take care of, and we have to respond for the family.
Mm-hmm. And do you think Iowa has done enough for the Latino community?
And I don't think so because like when they were releasing information, obviously all the information was in English.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it took them a while before they started releasing information in Spanish, and just not Latinos, but like in other races too. I think there's a big African community in Cedar Rapids, um, and obviously they didn't release information for them in their language. It's just a big language barrier, and they mostly everything was released in English. A lot of Latinos don't have the ability to read English. A lot of us depend on our kids to do the translating. And by the time the information was released in Spanish, we had already been far into the pandemic in Iowa. Like there was too many cases already going on, and in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, I think it was a little too late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how your life was before and post COVID. So can you tell me a little bit of how it was going out into the world before COVID?
Before COVID, life was great. I I could say like we were finally we were finally starting to do things as family. There was a point where like all we did was like work, 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 work. Like we didn't do anything other than work. Um, so like we finally decided to change our roles a little bit. We started doing weekend breakfast with the family early in the morning, Saturday and Sundays. We would try to do at least dinner on a Friday night and just go out as a family and eat and joke around, just do what we did. We didn't travel very much, but we started planning trips to like different states or maybe like state parks or just things that we didn't do as a family.
Mm-hmm.
So so like before COVID, like I said, everything was great. I know the pandemic started in like March around in this area, like March, April, and obviously we were excited for spring. Um, we had a lot of things planned for April and May and June, and we were looking forward to it. We're working um, and saving up so we can do our plans that we had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know people here in West Liberty, it's a big deal to go to like Allende in the summer. So
Yeah.
like how, if at all, has COVID impacted your ability to gather with family and friends for important events?
It's really effective because we're used to going every year.
Mhm.
no matter if it's in Allende or if we're doing a family trip to Texas to visit like family members in Texas. Obviously, you can't do that right now. So it was our home away from home, you could say, but
Mhm.
with stress levels being like super low. So
Mhm.
it's obviously it's impacted us very hard, and even till right now, we're still iffy about traveling. So I think it's gonna be a while before we finally loosen up and agree that it's okay to do those things again.
Yeah. So as of now, who do you interact with and why? Like why them?
Now, um, I think I think the most interaction I get with people is when I when I go to the fire department,
Mhm.
just because we're a team, and obviously our duty is to help the people, and obviously we hit topics of all sorts. Um, COVID has not been like at the beginning. COVID was a big topic for us, but we've learned to adjust to the pandemic. So we know like what we need to do to take care of ourselves, like and stuff like that. So I think the most interaction I get is with my team
Mhm.
from the fire department, and obviously everybody works in um different careers. So there's always a lot to talk about, a lot of chit chat. Other than that, I really don't interact with a lot of people. I just kind of stay stay home. I became a
Mhm.
homebody.
Yeah. So before we talk a little bit more about how COVID has impacted your job, um, has there been a change in what your family takes with you and with them when you leave your home?
Yeah. Obviously, now that we leave home, we take our masks. Um, we carry hand sanitizer in our vehicles. Obviously, we have travel size hand sanitizer also. Um, we limit our time outside wherever we go. So we'll
Mhm.
kind of set a schedule to going to the store. Uh, we don't try to stay, I guess our maximum time in the store is probably like an hour and a half or two at the most. So we try to limit our time outside. We also we try to avoid dining as much as we can. So a lot of drive-through areas or um, what else? Or anything that we can do outside. So what else do we take when we leave our homes? I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I do have one more question. Can you tell me a little bit more about how the relationships with your mom and your sister and your brother have changed?
Um, I don't think they have changed very much.
Mhm.
I think the thing I can only say is that we have become more positive. Um, the support for each other is twice as much now as it was before.
Mhm.
Um, we obviously we try to pick up a responsibility that we didn't have before now. So everybody has more tasks to do, and we try to spread them out, throughout the home.
Mhm.
So it's even though it's I don't know, I kind of feel bad saying, but it's been less stressful, and there's obviously there's even more love now between each other. Like I said, the support is there. It's always been here. And like even though my dad's gone, it doesn't change anything. I think it's incremented the way we see and care for each other.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So now I want to talk a little bit more about any like work related challenges. But before we do that, can you just give me like a brief overview of your job and also of your experiences working as a well, I guess another overview of like your responsibilities being a volunteer firefighter.
Yeah. So my I guess you can say my 8 to 5 job. Um,
Yeah.
I work in a body shop. So in all honesty, my body shop is, we are very, I kind of work in my own area, so I don't have a lot of interaction with people. And if I do, it's very seldom. I think a max of like 20 seconds at the most. It's quick, like briefing information. And obviously, we don't stand face to face. Like, they can stand over here and I can stand over here, and we can hear each other.
Mm-hmm.
My role and my job is I paint cars. Obviously, you know, I do the finishing touches and everything before they are delivered to customers. Um, and That's what I do in the mornings. And obviously, when I get off of work, I am on call pretty much 24/7 um, for the firefighter. For the firefighter side, I do participate in EMS activities. So I have 1 week out of the month where I'm on call 24/7, and I respond to medical calls. Um, so I guess being on the department, there's bigger roles and bigger responsibilities. Obviously, you're kind of risking your life for other people, even though once this pandemic has started, we have to take care of ourselves even that much more. But like I said, we've been in this pandemic long enough that we know what to do to take care of ourselves. Um, you know, People are counting on you to respond to these emergencies, and obviously, as your team members, also, you know, they expect you to show up and do your part. So it's a big responsibility, even though you know people realize the the work that goes into it, but behind the scenes is like where we have to prepare to get to make things seem like it's not hard of a task. You understand?
Yeah, I understand. So can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit of how it was going to work before COVID?
Um, Going to work before COVID, it was just a very. I don't think it's changed very much from now to before. All I can say is, the routine has been the same. I still wake up, have breakfast. I still go. I go to work. Obviously, like in the area that I'm at, I don't wear a mask just because of how separated I am. I still have um so I guess I kind of switched that around.
Mhm.
So like before COVID it was like just not not having the worries about getting infected, with COVID.
Mhm.
And then obviously during COVID, going to work is it's been a little bit different just because I still carry my mask, my sanitizer. I have sanitizer at work.
Mhm.
Obviously during work I don't wear my mask just because in the area that I work at I'm pretty much alone all day. Unless I have to go like to a different location to find something or something like that, then yeah, I'll throw my mask on.
Mhm.
But other than that, I really don't wear a mask like at work, just for the reason that I kind of work on my lonesome.
Mhm.
Um, but there's times where I do leave work, and obviously the whole, everything changes after I leave because I got to keep my guard up. I got to take care of myself and protect myself.
Mhm.
Just just because sometimes I might hit a store or I got to pick something up real quick. That way, when I come home, I don't have to leave again.
Mhm.
So I try to do everything before I come home because once I come home, I pretty much stay home.
Yeah. And has COVID impacted your work at all?
When I was off for March, April, May. I was off for 3 months,
Mhm.
just during the whole quarantine process and everything that was happening in the family.
Mhm.
So I think after that, I think after my quarantine was up and I finally returned to work, work was a little slow. It wasn't. I couldn't say we were very busy, but now, now I can say work is starting to pick up. Things seem starting to go back to normal.
Mhm.
Um, I go to work every day. Um, there hasn't really been. I think we were considered a what do they call that?
Essential.
Yeah, I had a brain fart right there. Yeah, we're considered an essential location. So
Mhm.
we were still up and going even through the pandemic. So there was a time where it did affect us a very little bit, but it seems like I said, people are starting to do things like it was back to normal. So work kind of has been back to normal.
Yeah. And with going back to work, have there been any change in procedures or any changes in like duties?
No, actually, no, not there hasn't, other than just washing your hands more frequently.
Hmm.
But other than that, everything has stayed about pretty much the same. I mean, to me, it's just kind of like, yeah, I guess you don't care about your employees, but it's not really much I can do. But as long as I do what I'm doing and I'm taking care of myself, as bad as it sounds, that's all that really matters for me
Yeah.
in that instance.
Yeah. And what do you worry about while you're at work?
Obviously, you don't know where everybody's been at.
Hmm.
Everybody goes. We get off of work and you don't know where everybody goes, or obviously you hear like, "Oh, I'm gonna travel somewhere, or I'm gonna go somewhere," and you don't know. Obviously, you don't know where they're going, or what places are they hitting, or are they taking care of themselves? Are they following the guidelines or not? So that's a big worry because the weekend comes and there's a lot of young people that work at my job. So
Hmm.
you don't know if they hit up bars or they're partying or whatever. So it's that's obviously I'm not gonna try to get involved in everybody's life. Like, hey, what you did this weekend? Were you partying and this and that? No, you just kind of gotta trust your own gut.
Hmm. Yeah. So, talking a little bit more about you being furloughed from work, have you and your family have had any, sorry, let me ask the question again. Do you and your family have any concerns about finances because of the pandemic?
At first we did worry about finances, but I the person that was helping us through the whole from the health department, the lady that was tracking our cases, she actually she helped me out a lot, because she wrote me a few letters that I could send out to like financial places, like mortgage, insurance companies, credit card companies, and that. Um, with that letter there, they pretty much gave us a break for a few months.
Hmm.
So at first it was a big concern. Obviously, I started making some moves, and I had to figure out like how we're gonna handle this if we can't even work. Um, we had no income coming in. Obviously, we had savings, but we didn't want to like empty out our savings just because we weren't working. So there's always you had to figure out the situation, and I figured it out, and you know, and I thank her all. Obviously, I still stay in touch with her, and thanks to her, we caught a break, and I think that really helped us out in the long
Hmm.
run.
Yeah, that's good that she was able to help you guys out.
Yeah.
Um, so how has COVID impacted your ability to financially contribute to your family? Like, have you had to take out any more responsibilities, take on any additional financial responsibilities now?
Um. Yeah. I guess now I have to pick up where my dad left off. I could say. Just with he didn't have like anything major that I can say is like that affected us financially.
Hmm.
Um. Other than I just pretty much took over like a mortgage payment and a couple credit card bills that I had to. Mostly everything got cleared out just because I think he was insured through a lot of things. Obviously, it's something that was very new to me, so I had to make a lot of phone calls and I had to reassure myself on what I was doing and if I was doing the right thing and how I had to get done. And So, I had to take care of that. I took that role myself just because I knew all the financial things that happened in the house. And, it took the stress off of mom and my siblings, and they didn't have to worry so much about that. So I think my only biggest responsibility now is like a mortgage payment.
Mm.
So,
Okay. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Now I want to talk a little bit more about like the current social movements that's happened like during the summer and the pandemic.
social movements like
Like
the
the Black Lives Matter
oh,
movement. Yeah, like
oh
the protests.
yeah.
So so how, if at all, have the current social movements in conjunction with COVID-19 impacted your daily life? Like if at
Yeah,
all.
they haven't.
They haven't.
Uh-uh.
Has it changed your perspectives on going out?
No.
No?
Uh-uh.
And have you been involved in any of like the social movements or protests that happened over the summer?
Uh-uh.
Okay, yeah, that was my question. So I have a couple of wrap up questions before I let you go. So can you talk to me a little bit more of how Iowa has handled the pandemic and anything you would like to see differently?
I think Iowa hasn't handled the pandemic. um,
Mm-hmm.
the governor has really been very careless about the situation. Um, I think the way we handled it should have been from the get go. Like she tried to change everything when it was too late. Obviously, I mean we slowed it down, but it could have been like completely stopped before it even happened in Iowa. And the only reason why I say it is because our population in Iowa is slim to none compared to other states. I think the population of if I'm correct, of like Iowa City, Des Moines, and like part of the Quad Cities is equal to one county in LA,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just one county in LA. So you're pretty much saying Iowa was one county, and if we would have locked down Iowa, we would have been okay. But they wanted to let us be free roamers, let us go on with our daily lives. Obviously, we living in Iowa knew about all the lockdowns happening and all the hot spots that were going on. Um, and I don't know, it saddens me that you have a governor that can be so selfish, and she was not worried about anybody else but herself,
Mm-hmm.
and just the fact that a lot of people lost a lot of loved ones, and that could have been prevented is I think what enrages people during this pandemic. Like if you would have followed the right protocols, none of this would have been happening in Iowa right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say it is because we are so spread out in Iowa. Like if you really take a drive through Iowa, like you every town is so far apart. If you drive into the country, every house is so far apart. Like I think the only part we could have gotten like really like out of control would have been like Des Moines and Iowa City, and maybe like the Cedar Rapids and Cedar Falls area. But other than that, everybody's so widely spread. Like Iowa should have never been a hot spot in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to see differently in how everything was handled?
I think now is too late to change anything. Obviously, mask mandates have become popular in Iowa, which, which I think should have been happening since the beginning. Um, do I think we need another lockdown? I think yes. Um, Obviously, cases are starting to rise. Sorry.
Okay.
Cases are on the rise again. I think people need to keep their guard up because a lot of people are starting to let it down. A lot of people are starting to go out again like nothing's happening out here. So I think for Iowa to have a successful second run in the pandemic, I think it really needs to rearrange its protocols.
Mm-hmm.
Um, obviously we've caught a little break, and with I think there will be a second wave with winter coming, and I think Iowa should act before it gets worse.
Yeah, of course. And how has the federal government handled the pandemic?
Um, I think the federal hasn't really done much because I think every state has taken the pandemic into their own hands. Um, I think with I think the only good thing they've probably done is close down the borders, and they pretty much let every state governor take their own actions. Um, other than that, I haven't really seen much from the federal.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so those were my questions. Is there anything else you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID-19 that I have not asked you about?
Uh, no, I think I've hit about pretty much everything.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just have one more reflection question before I let you go.
Hmm.
Um, so like in the Latino community, obviously it's very like we're talking about like being very social, being always together, always like being happy. Like has the pandemic impacted like your mental health at all?
Mm, mm, yes and no. Um, I think the reason I say yes is because I'm not used to being at home.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I like being outdoors. I like going out. I like seeing the world. I like, you know, being. I guess me traveling is my reset for my mental health,
Hmm.
and obviously being in a routine and knowing that every day is going to be the same is what it's what has affected me mentally. You could say.
Hmm.
The reason why I say no is because obviously I wake up knowing that I have something to fight for.
Hmm.
Um, Even though no matter how bad things get, obviously they got to get better sooner or later. So there's a positive and negative side to it.
Hmm. All right. Well, those were all my questions. Thank you so much for doing the interview. I know I've been bothering you for like a month now.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so I appreciate your time to take to your time to do the interview.
Yeah, no problem.
Mhm.